talk about but background noise, apparatus noise, in the soundtracks, or which kind of relationships between
Which soundtracks from? I'm sorry.
from unused bands
From unused.
and thus bands.
Industrial.
Oh, industrial.
He found a link between our talks.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I can find any direct relation between the soundtracks of industrial bands and this kind of noise I was talking about, the system noise, the machines noise. But one thing that I can see in common is that they are fond of the sound that machines themselves produce, and some kind of sound that is not immediately attached to any meaning. It doesn't mean anything. It does not represent an object, a concrete object. And so in that case, I was talking about music production in general, and in general music production does exactly the same that film tries to do, that is to erase the material traces of recordings. But some kind of bands or music styles, just like industrial, and they, on the contrary, they are fond of this kind of noises, and they will try to make those noises appear as a kind of, let's say, in an effective way. You are related to sound themselves, is not to what they mean, but to the material traces of them. I don't know if I really answered that, but with the
Well, I mean, the only thing I can add is that I think it's not surprising that industrial groups were drawn to making soundtracks, and even like, imaginary soundtracks, like, I mean, but even people like Brian Eno, he really liked listening to soundtracks of films he'd never seen, and then also to make soundtracks for films that don't exist and this kind of thing. And there's a lot of different industrial groups engage with this in different ways. Sometimes, like, both Coil and Throbbing Gristle worked with Derek Jarman, and Coil composed these Hellraiser themes that were never used by Clive Barker, and so forth. And I think all of these things is that because they're interested in this, this sort of world formation, and soundtracks are a really good way of doing that, as well as sort of audiovisual things. But I think always there's sort of a sense of trying to make things which are kind of noisy, that are not just about, eliminating, things in the name of a perfect realism, but actually creating an interesting world, whether that's, through sound and images. So some of the later work, more recent things of Chris and Cozy, that they always did sort of things with video, but very weird things with video, where the whatever it was, they do these site-specific works, but whatever was originally seen is so processed and so modified that you just sort of see this, weird kinds of patterns, and that's kind of an analog to what is often going on with sound as well. And I think it can be seen in the sense of this, process of worlding, and that's the appeal of a soundtrack.
I just try one question for you, José. What you told made me think about. I got some friends working in cinema, and one is working like a tone engineer, and he always told me that when he was working, then he had to just stop all sounds everywhere, and like he's just hearing every kind of sound that can disturb the movie, and it was like he even when he had to make the sound noises for the sound of the movie, then he had to rebuild it. It's like if he can we so build a noise from sounds and makes that thing for the viewers and the listener that this noise is a real noise, but in fact it's made with sound. So it's like the noise is after the sound. So is it possible? If I can jump.
Let me see if it's possible for to do. But when
build noise from sound.
Yes, but what kind of noise? What kind of noise are we referring to? Because
something that is listened like a noise, like it was the real noise, but
like
it's made with sound.
That noise as disturbances or noise or as the sound, because noise is a kind of word that people in filmmaking they don't like, they don't use. It's something to be avoided. So it is not used in traditional filmmaking. Nothing that is considered to be disturbance of the narrative is used. It must be avoided. When you have to reproduce a kind of noise, let's say an explosion, it's not considered a noise. It's considered sound effects. It's a kind of terminology that it's different. We can see by this terminology that noise is a word that is to be avoided in film narrative, because noise is everything that confuses, everything that makes the narrative not work. So if it's a noise of an explosion, if it's a noise of something, a car.
If it's ground noise, you told us about
ground noise. Yeah. Oh,
and
yes.
You can build it again, no?
Ground noise, you say ground noise, the noise that you get in the recordings, for example, magnetic tapes. No, ground noise is something that it's no longer, it's since ever, but since the 70s they were trying so to avoid it with mechanisms like filters and things like that. So sometimes they have to, if they want the ground noise as something static, for example, a vinyl record, and so the guy puts a vinyl music and he listens, and then you have that cracks and clicks of the vinyl. It is all made again. You have, I got, unfortunately my examples did not work, but there was an example of a film of the noise of a visual noise of a film with scratches, and it was all made by computer. It was not a real piece of film with scratches, and it was by simulated. So you have mechanisms of simulating noise from tapes, noise from records, noise, any kind of noise. So it's easier for the softwares and the computers to simulate noises than to record them again.
Bon, je suis désolé, il faut qu'on arrête les questions. We have to project the other way, so thank you.
Bon, alors Hélène va vous présenter les projections, Hélène Singer. J'en profite pour faire une petite annonce. Je vous fais passer une feuille de présence. Je le fais jamais avec mes étudiants, mais là c'est pour nos statistiques. Voilà.